performance across the Commonwealth. Though you may not be able to speak for yourself, I know you want to extend appreciation to members of the House for their continued support as you assume this important international responsibility. I also like to mention, and it gives me distinct pleasure to be able to mention, that recently parliamentarians from Pakistan, Ontario, Jamaica, and Wales were recognized at the Commonwealth Parliamentarian of the Year Awards at the Commonwealth Conference in Barbados. And our beloved Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment, and Sport, and former Deputy Leader of the House, was awarded the 2025 Parliamentary Equality and Diversity Award. And this is in recognition of her transformational and inclusive leadership in advancing gender equality and social justice. As a matter of fact, the CPA Secretary General, Stephen Twiggs, said that the Commonwealth Parliamentary of the Year Award aligns with their strategic objective of promoting Commonwealth values of democracy and sustainable development. I think her award is a recognition of her significant contribution to gender equality and diversity, not just in Jamaica, but globally as well, as she has led the development and implementation of our National Strategic Action Plan to eliminate gender-based violence, and has piloted significant pieces of legislation, such as the Sexual Harassment Prevention Act 2021 and the Domestic Violence Amendment Act in 2023. I think she deserves our recognition. Madam Speaker, I also have the pleasure, I don't know if it's protocol to show the Parliament the award, and I know probably on the adjournment you may make a statement about this wonderful award you have received. Madam Speaker, I now turn over to you to call on the member, Minister Bartlett, to make his presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, House Leader. Members, first to his feet, on the statement by Minister. On the statement by Minister is the Honorable Minister of Tourism. Please make him welcome.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to update this Honourable House on the performance of the Jamaica's tourism industry, the evaluation of our global marketing strategy, and the introduction of a new local first policy direction, a bold, homegrown framework designed to make every Jamaican the first beneficiary of our tourism successes. Tourism has once again proven to be the engine driving Jamaica's economic momentum, generating jobs, attracting investments, and transforming communities across the island. Yet, as we expand our reach globally, our focus must remain firmly rooted at home. The growth of tourism must mean the growth of Jamaica. This is not merely an economic update, Madam Speaker. It is a reaffirmation of our mission to make tourism a force for national transformation. The global tourism landscape is experiencing a robust recovery. According to the UN World Tourism Barometer, over 690 million tourists traveled internationally between January and June 2025, 33 million more than in the previous period and the same period, in fact, last year. Travelers are spending more, staying longer, and seeking experiences that are meaningful, sustainable, and culturally authentic. In our own region, the Caribbean welcomed more than 32 million visitors in the first half of 2025, surpassing pre-pandemic levels. The message is clear. Global travelers are once again turning to the Caribbean for the best in hospitality, culture, and natural beauty, and Jamaica continues to lead the way. In fact, Madam Speaker, in the last World Travel Awards regional event in St. Lucia, Jamaica swept the Caribbean with awards, copying 46 awards in almost every category in the area. As the world then rediscovers travel, Jamaica stands ready, not just to welcome visitors, but to lead the region into a new era of sustainable growth. Madam Speaker, Jamaica's performance mirrors this global resurgence of which I spoke earlier. We are projecting 4.3 million visitor arrivals for 2025, a 2.7% increase over 24, and earning $4.6 billion, representing 7.1% growth over the year. For the upcoming winter season, in 2025 to 26, the stopover arrivals are projected to increase by 6.9% and cruise by 24.3% to enable a gross earning increase of 8% to reach for the winter, and that will be a new high of $1.7 billion. With this trajectory, Jamaica is firmly on course to achieve its 5 by 5 by 5 mission. If you recall, Madam Speaker, 5 million visitors earning $5 billion within the 5-year period which started in 2020, notwithstanding COVID, notwithstanding burial, and notwithstanding the powerful event of September 3, 2025. Madam Speaker, but that is now behind us in terms of our thinking, because in this new dispensation, it calls for a new and bold vision. And so, Madam Speaker, the new KPIs for tourism will be 5 by 8 by 10. That is to achieve 5 million visitors earning $10 billion by 2030 of this year. 8 million visitors. I said 5? 8 million. Thanks. Keen ear. Yes. Following good. Madam Speaker, that 8 million, of course, is the Prime Minister's number, if you recall. He said it very clearly to us that we are below our threshold when we stay at 5. So having achieved 5, Prime Minister, the next frontier is 8. So this vision, Madam Speaker, reflects our confidence not just in numbers, but in people, in the creativity, hospitality, and resilience that defined brand Jamaica. Our marketing focus is expanding beyond traditional markets to embrace new frontiers in Latin America, Middle East, Asia, and of course, Madam Speaker, this is supported by enhanced airlift, digital innovation, and strategic partnerships that ensure Jamaica will remain top of mind for global travelers. The United States, Madam Speaker, remains our strongest source market, representing nearly 70% of arrivals. Despite earlier disruptions linked, of course, to the U.S. federal shutdown, the demand still remains solid. I just came out of the market over the weekend, completing the U.S., Canada, and the UK, and I'm satisfied that the trends are clear. Jamaica remains a solid destination with strong partnership emerging in almost every area, and indeed, Madam Speaker, that we are seeing new flights emerging. We are seeing a strength also in the Caribbean that is unprecedented. Latin America now emerged as our new frontier. In fact, First half of 2025, we welcomed 30,806 visitors, a 77% increase over the same period last year. And this, Madam Speaker, is just indicating seat capacity out of South America is expanding. We grew by some 74% over the period, all because we now are connected very strong through our commercial partnerships with Copa Airlines, LATAM, Avianca, and we are tapping into the fast-growing markets of Brazil, Colombia, Chile, and Ecuador. My next sojourn as we expand the market will be in South America to cover those areas in the latter part of November to ensure that the benefit of cross-climatic frontiers are here for us. That is, when there is summer in Jamaica, there is winter in South America. And therefore, we can benefit from that cross-climatic arrangement. And that is how this strategy will enable us to achieve the objective that we set of 8 by 10 by 5. Madam Speaker, Jamaica's new policy direction for tourism inclusive growth is embodied in our policy that we're driving under the rubric of local first. So, Madam Speaker, as we expand globally, we must ensure that the benefits of tourism remain local. To this end, the Ministry of Tourism is establishing the Local First policy, the new direction for tourism development built on the extraordinary success of the Tourism Linkages Network, which, Madam Speaker, the result is outstanding. For the first decade of the TLN, we have proven that tourism can really drive immeasurable local development. Programs such as Christmas in July, which generated over 200 million in sales for small producers, young people, first-time entrance into entrepreneurship. Established, for example, the Alex Network. It's a platform for the small farmers across Jamaica. And in 2 years, they traded nearly 2 billion Jamaican dollars between hotels and themselves, selling tomatoes and lettuce and cabbage and potato and all the other small crops that are grown in the area. Then, Madam Speaker, we established the Artisan Village to enable more and more of our local artisans to have access not just to showcasing their products, but also to entertain, because entertainers are there. Gastronomy, food, Jamaican food for our visitors, particularly for the cruise visitors. And the first example, of course, is in Falmouth, where we are seeing the benefit of that. But, Madam Speaker, the big part of that Artisan Village concept is the authenticity that it brings. It enables the visitors also to authenticate their visit by taking back products that are uniquely Jamaican, made here in Jamaica by our Jamaican artisans. And it is not only that they bring them to the location, that while they are there in situ, they are manufacturing, they are producing, so that the visitor brings a design to the artisan in the village. And while he's off the ship and gone to an attraction somewhere else in the island, comes back 4, 6, 8 hours afterwards, he gets his finished product, uniquely Jamaican, presenting the opportunity now for a great conversation piece. And to enable them to say, yes, I did visit Jamaica because this is truly, authentically Jamaica. So, Madam Speaker, Jamaica Local First will elevate this model from a program to a national policy framework. 5 minutes.
The member's time for speaking has expired.
Madam Speaker, as the member's time has expired, we ask that the member be allowed about 10 more minutes to complete his presentation.
Members, the question is that the minister be allowed 8 minutes to complete his presentation. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thanks, colleagues, for your indulgence. So, Madam Speaker, building on these successes that I have indicated, Local First will elevate this model from a program to a national policy framework. It enshrines the principle that Jamaican farmers, artisans, manufacturers, transport operators, entertainers, and that growth is inclusive, sustainable, and anchored in local enterprise. Because the truest measure of tourism success is not the number of arrivals, it is in the number of lives that have been improved. The framework introduces all procurement targets, community benefit agreements, CBAs as we call them, in every resort area, and a linkage data network that will publicly track how much of the tourism dollar stays in Jamaica. And this is the first time that that will be happening in the history of tourism in Jamaica. Local First ensures that every new investment in tourism translates into jobs, contracts, and opportunities for Jamaicans. To drive this process, Madam Speaker, the Ministry has established a high-level task force on Local First. And this task force will be led by the Minister of State, the Honorable Tova Hamilton, and will bring together key tourism agencies. And I'll be inviting the opposition spokesperson on tourism to join this task force, because it is important that it is understood that Local First has no color. It has no creed, it has no class. Local First is for Jamaicans and must be felt and experienced by all Jamaicans. So we will recommend that the full participation of both sides be on this very important area. So, Madam Speaker, the Tourism Enhancement Fund, the Tourism Product Development Company, the Jamaica Tourist Board, the Jamaica Center for Tourism Innovation, the Jamaica Vacations Limited, and the Global Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Center, along with critical partners from across the wide economy, including RADA, JAMPRO, JBDC, JMEA, and the local municipal corporations, among others. This will be a broad-based arrangement, and the consultations will begin shortly through the efforts of the task force. And the consultation will be wide and deep and will continue for 90 days. So that at the end, Madam Speaker, of our first 100 days, we should have the framework ready for a policy, a white paper to come to this House on this revolutionary strategy of Local First. Madam Speaker, when we spoke of Local First in other places, the response was awe. And they are anticipating Jamaica's implementation, because it will represent a model that the rest of the world can look at. Because tourism has always been seen in many places as an extractive industry. This Local First will enable a new perspective on tourism as a truly inclusive industry. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Responding is the member from St. Catherine Northwest.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I congratulate the Minister and the industry for all the things that they have achieved over continuously over a very long period of time. I've heard the good news presented by the Minister, but even the Good News Bible still had revelations as a part and a chapter. At the end. But at some point, we must ensure that we seek to create an end that isn't revelation. I've heard the Minister speak to something that sounds quite exciting about the number of flights that are coming to Jamaica and the new flights opening new frontiers to Jamaica. Yet, when one looks at the document, you recognize that the level of dependence on the United States is still maintained. Over 70% of the persons coming to Jamaica are coming from the United States. This is similar to the last 10 years of approximately 70 to 73% of visitors to Jamaica coming from the United States. I see the Minister indicating 63. However, I think in the document I saw 70. In the past it was 63%. Okay. But you have indicated, Minister, that we have reversed in differentiation. I understand, but I would hope that my 5 minutes is not a debate. But the Minister will be allowed to respond, because the size of the United States have not increased or diminished over time. The dependence on the United States have caused for a statement made by the Minister that simple things like a lockdown in the US had had great impact on our arrival numbers. And the effort must be for a greater differentiation of markets. At one point, we were going strong in England. At another point, we're going strong in Canada. One concern that one must also be considering is the level of seat support that we're offering. I saw no mention of that, but it is not unusual that to open new frontiers, there's a subsidy offered to these airlines that are going to then be coming to Jamaica. That subsidy must be placed in the price of opening these new frontiers, and we would love to know that the public is informed if seat support is being offered to those entities and the level of seat support that is being offered to those entities. Additionally, excitement can be found in the Jamaica First statement. But the Jamaica First statement must also be a part of the consideration for the benefits of the industry in the most direct Jamaican, i.e. the employees. I wonder if Jamaica First is the reason for the high levels, local first, that the locals employed to the entities. Just recently we saw a demonstration in many hotels because the locals were dissatisfied with the remuneration and treatment that they were receiving in some of those hotels. Indeed, it is necessary for us to consider a special hotel minimum wage because the circumstances of the hotel workers are not the norm of a regular 9 to 5. There is no person who is serving as a waitress that can say, you know what, I'm going to wash my face and bathe and ready up because time is finished before she finished serving the person, even if the person intends to stay a much longer period of time. There was a point in time that we considered the security guard for a special minimum wage because the perils of the job, including the time of travel to and from job if you're on a particular shift, must be considered as well. Does local first also include investors? We can see some of our members here from Westmoreland that can tell you that Negril is suffering because the small and medium-sized entities are being out-competed by larger foreign-owned entities that are causing for lower prices, that are causing for a disbursement of investment, that have more new properties, that have greater brand recognition, especially in these markets that they're going after, that benefit from larger promotional budgets, and they are dwarfing the... Take out the next 3 minutes that he was debating. They are dwarfing
You have to sit, member. House Leader, the member's time for speaking has finished.
House Leader, I think we should afford the same courtesy as we.
It doesn't work like that, House Leader.
How long did it?
House, the question is that the member be allowed 2 additional minutes to complete. Member, please use it wisely.
Yeah, the same, it doesn't work like that. The same courtesy isn't extended. But that is fine. So thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member, please, this is not the best sitting to start these types of discourse. The minister gets more time than the member who is responding, who normally gets only 5 minutes. So the timing is based on nothing other than what is given in the standing orders and the leniency of the speaker. So you are giving leniency. Please do not allow anybody to distract you so you may complete in the time. Thank you, member.
Well, local first, Minister, Madam Speaker, let me hurry up, should be extended as well to our small and medium properties that are suffering, that are also most affected by competition from Airbnbs, and a program must be in place to sustain and to protect the existence and profitability of our small and medium-sized entities as well. We heard exciting news about the craft market. However, we have recognized that craft have dissolved into almost a retail industry, with Chinese craft being the most dominant presence in most of the things. We have seen that there's also very limited protection for design, to the point that persons that attended Edna Manley see no true benefit unless they have a place within the craft market, because their designs are not satisfactorily protected. Finally, because of the context of time, we would also want to recommend to you the Minister of Entertainment's conversation last week, where entertainment can be used as an attractor to Jamaica. We have been dependent on climate differentiation. That's why we call those coming from the north bird tourists. They fly south for winter. And you're now seeking to contribute to a new climatic differentiation for the summer months. But the summer months, entertainment can be used as a chief attractor. We can build out the Sumfests of this country. We can build out the entertainment brand that Jamaica has established, to use that instead of climatic differences as an attractor. So again, we congratulate you, Minister, and as well the industry. But we are acknowledging the challenges that we can face if local first is only a slogan and not implemented on behalf of the workers, of the small and medium-sized hoteliers, in particular the owners, and on behalf of the Juta tours and the taxi operators who have been squeezed out of the industry to this point. As well, we can't be giving all these work permits to persons that the skills exist in Jamaica to work in the hotels, including entertainment. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thanks for being present.
I see you turning your mic up. I see you turning your mic up, but not on.
Madam Speaker, just to... Sorry. Yes, I just wanted to respond directly to the opposition spokesperson pro tem on, on this subject. Madam Speaker, the member raised some very important points, especially in relation to local first, because it is that reason and more why this concept and the strategy of local first is introduced. You recall that it was a manifesto indicator for the last election, that we were satisfied that because the industry had reached what we call the critical mass, that is, now we are where there's a ratio of 1-to-1 visitor stopover to population. and the big players of the world are now interested in you. The big investors are coming. And the models that are now being utilized relating to vertical and horizontal integration threaten the very basis on which we have driven the industry in the last 10, 15 years in particular, where our effort is to have a stronger retention of the tourism donor in the local economy. And so the infrastructure required for that, we have been slowly putting in place, not sufficiently, Madam Speaker, and that we acknowledge small countries like ours have that problem. But we have trained more workers in the industry than any other government in the history of Jamaica. Trained and certified. I established the Jamaica Center for Tourism Innovation in 2017, which is a pathway certification facility to enable competent workers on the job who are not certified to be certified with international certification from the American Hotel and Lodging Education Institute, from the American Culinary Foundation. And since then, 25,000 workers of the tourism industry are certified with that designation. They can leave now and go anywhere to work. And the truth is that when we go to other countries and we go into hotels, we are shocked to hear, Minister, I come from Trelawney. I come from all over, because they have what we call portability. They are now able to peddle their wares with certification. They have stackable credentials that they can move around with the world because we have certified and trained them. We went into high schools, and now, last year, 358 students graduated from the 33 high schools that have a program that gives a certificate in hotel management and customer service, and in some levels, associate degree. We've gone further. Talk about the entertainers. We established the first entertainment academy that we are now training fit for purpose entertainment and entertainers for the industry, supported by local impresarios and local producers here, working with us to train them. DJs are certified DJs. We went further. We established the Gastronomy Academy. And 2 weeks ago, before I left for the market, we graduated the first 2 executive sous chefs in the history of Jamaica, 2 ladies who are now working at Hyatt Hotel in Montego Bay. You don't have to clap for that. But these represent the steps that we are taking to professionalize the industry and to deal with the issue of low salaries. Because it is not always by legislation. It's by building capacity to produce more, to add value, to be able to innovate in the workplace. And so it is answering the question that he raised. The last point that we want to make on this, Madam Speaker, but a little 101 is necessary sometimes, so as to ensure that the right questions are asked.
No, Minister, you have 3 questions remaining, and it would not be a new statement by Minister. So there are 3 members waiting to also ask questions. The member from St. Andrew South will go first, based on the fact that so many mics were on and off. And then Westmoreland Western, and last is the member from St. Mary's Central, in that order.
Thank you for your guidance, Madam Speaker. Well, Madam Speaker, it would be remiss of me if I did not answer the question in relation to seat support, because I do think that this is a very important consideration when members are trying to establish the cost of the market initiatives and also the cost of airlift into our space. So just to make the point that the new market of South America that we are now annexing, the airlines are all what we call scheduled charters. And therefore, the support that is needed from them is not seat support. It's marketing support, which is part of what we do. And so, to answer your question, there is no direct support for seats for these new markets. The final point that I wish to answer, Madam Speaker, is the issue of the small hotels and the problems. We are responding to that. And we established, as you remember, $1 billion at Exim Bank, which has been on lent to small players, small hoteliers and small players, at the lowest interest rates in the country, a total of $25 million a time, to assist them in dealing with upscaling and building capacity to respond to some of the marketing challenges that they have today. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Minister, thank you for your statement and for your response to the opposition's reply to your statement. I have two questions. One is relating to the 5x5x5 vision. You indicated that that began in 2020, so this would be the 5th year of the 5. And you say that Jamaica is firmly on course to achieving it, but you've said that the projected arrivals for this year, 2025, is 4.3 million, and that the earnings are projected at 4.6 billion US. Both of those are below 5 billion visitors and $5 billion. So I was wondering on what basis you say you're on course for achieving it. The other question I have relates to the Jamaica, well, what do we call it? The local first concept, which really should have been the essence of our tourism policy from Jamaica first got into tourism. And I think the lack of focus on that has led to a model of tourism which now needs to be reoriented to be greater value added in our local economy. So we certainly support this concept, and we've been espousing it as well. One of the vexed sectors, and there are several, but one of the vexed sectors I know is transportation in Jamaica, where there's a sense that the vertical integration of the larger players, foreign-owned players, are excluding local service providers in various areas, and transportation is one. I noticed that you have 6 technical working groups that are being established, but I don't see transportation mentioned in any of those, and I was wondering where they would fit in within that structure. And related to that, and this is a sort of fundamental question, is how far do you envisage us going in ensuring local first? Because, you know, there's exhortation at one end of the spectrum, and there is other methodologies of trying to force a situation to adjust because people will not otherwise adjust their behavior. And I want to know what level of commitment you have to that, because it will impact how far we are able to get along the local first mission. So those are my questions.
Members, there's a small challenge. If you turn your mic off and then you turn your mic on again, unfortunately, you are no longer in the sequence, which is why I announced the 3 persons based on when I saw their mics go on. Unfortunately, opposition leader had switched off his mic, but he was actually next. So I've turned on 3 mics, and I realized that some of the members I saw, particularly the member from Westmoreland Western, his mic didn't come back on. So, members, and then you turned your mic off again. So just for the new members of Parliament, the mic system goes in order of exactly who turned their mic on. The speaker does not operate the mics. So when your mic goes on first, then you will be the first person to speak. Second, you're the second. third, then you would be third. So what should happen? The person who is responding in statement by ministers, that's the person who should speak first, and then questions are asked after. All right? So I'm hoping everybody is now on target. No, the next member is the member from Westmoreland Western.
Minister, I think you're the... Minister, let me first commend you.
Who bought this full mic system?
Good question. Don't turn it off. Don't turn this off. No, ask her. Should I turn it off? I turn it off and then you say we can't talk like a thief. The thief coming together.
Members, I won't repeat, but since persons who are up to speak turn their mics off, you are no longer in the queue. So for today, since it's a learning process, I'm asking everyone to turn their mic off. And we will send out some notes just so that new members are comfortable with how the mic process works. The member from Westmoreland Western, you are first up. And only really one mic gives the best volume with the new system. Two mics don't necessarily make any adjustment. Thank you, member. You may proceed with your question.
I feel like a first timer. Minister, first let me commend you on the, congratulate you on the local first policy initiative. Minister, Minister, I think you'd agree with me with Negrel's contribution to the overall national tourism product. But for local first to work, some things have to work first for the people in Negril, the small operators, the citizens that work within the tourism industry. And I'll go through some things here and I'd want your feedback on it. Number one, the infrastructure in Negril needs to, if it's local first, the local players in the market, they speak of the infrastructure in Negril. It needs to upgrade, it needs to look presentable, it needs to more or less look as if it's world class or other sections of Jamaica. Number two is they speak also, they speak in terms of the beautification of Negril. Minister, you can't have local first for the people of Negril if we don't deal with the bottleneck.
Member, we'll have some challenges when I am sitting in this chair as speaker.
Okay.
You are to ask a question. Your time for making a statement is only 5 minutes, and that is allowed to the person who is responding to the minister. Other than that, each person allowed in respect of questions afterwards in keeping with standing orders 11A and 17 subsection 2 must ask a question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Minister, could you give me an update on the following? The bottleneck in Lucy, which is preventing the hotel operators in Negril, both small and large, in terms of attracting more visitors to Negril. That's number one. Question two, the beautification of Negril. Question three, the upgrade of the infrastructure in Negril. And question four, which I'd like to ask you is, could it be that Negril could be marketed as a by itself, a standalone, to benefit the people of Negril who have suffered so long. And Minister, in terms of this local first, how does it fit with the overall strategy of those operators in Negril now who are operating and find it difficult when you speak in terms of the amount of stopovers, the amount of visitors, and Negril still not feeling the impact of the amount of visitors that is coming on our shores in Jamaica, the small operators?
Chris.
The next question is to come from the member from St. Mary Central.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I too want to congratulate Minister Bartlett. I think a policy to grow the numbers by putting Jamaica first, or a local first policy, is something that we all would commend. I have two questions, Minister Bartlett. And the context for the question is the statement speaks to the evolution of our global marketing strategy. And I want to know if a part of this evolution will involve the engagement of creatives so that the unique stories within Jamaica and places like Central St. Mary, which isn't a large part of the tourism product, but these stories are saleable. Whether the strategy will include engaging creatives to ensure that a more diverse product is a part of this new direction. The second question relates to the projected growth rate. I'm seeing that you're projecting a growth of 2.7% for 2024. I noticed for 2025, I note that for 2024, the growth rate in the Caribbean based on CTO was 6.1%. And I want to know what accounts for such a major difference in terms of what Jamaica is projecting this year and what the Caribbean's growth rate was last year. Thanks.
I am wondering if the minister would like to respond to the set of questions. No?
Feel like coaching.
Can you free up everybody just turn off? No, no, turn up your own and turn that one. Whoever recommended should be.
The member from Westmoreland Central. You just turned your mic off? I just turned it on. You turned it off. All right, everyone, you can turn your mic off, with the exception of Minister Bartlett. Minister, you may go ahead and respond.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As is indicated, it's a learning process. So, Madam Speaker, the first question from the opposition leader, the first two questions. The difference there in the numbers is really the difference between fiscal year and calendar year. So the calendar year was indicated there, and the fiscal will make the 5 by 5 by 5, which is to the 31st of August. You can look out for it. The second question, of course, has to do with the method. Yes. Madam Speaker, we deliberately avoided that element in this preliminary part of the presentation, simply because we're allowing for the consultation that will be wide, and based on what comes back from the consultation, it will give us a sense as to whether the buy-in is sufficiently deep and strong to enable moral suasion and the market to have its way, or in fact, we would need to engage, whether fiscal and legislative or regulatory arrangements to be brought in. So, Madam Speaker, the member's question is well placed, and we do consider that, but in a free market situation, we rather like to make the market take its course, but more importantly, to have moral suasion as the driving force rather than hard legislation. The next set of questions from the member from Western Westmoreland. Everything that he actually says is embodied in the concept of local first, and I indicated how we have been working with some of the small players. We do recognize, we're coming to that, please. Member from South Manchester, we're dealing with the bottleneck in Lucy. Yeah. But we wanted to first of all deal with what we know impacts him, and to indicate to him further that this morning we established a small team that will go to Negril on the 22nd to engage the stakeholders and the concerns that have been raised over the last few days, because we are conscious of the fact that there are areas that needs to be dealt with in Negril. No question about that at all, and we certainly will. The issue of the bottleneck in Lucy is a concern, and the Prime Minister has indicated already the plans for us to have the bypass road established, and that will take us straight, in fact, from the perimeter road that we're doing in Montego, straight across the hills into Negril. And not only will we be dealing with that, but we will be changing the whole landscape within that area, and to enable a stronger tourism product presence from Hopewell straight back to Lucy. May it please you, Madam Speaker, in that regard. The final set of questions came about with regards to the CTO growth, as they indicated, 24. Just to indicate to you that the period of that level of growth for Jamaica went immediately after COVID, and we were the leaders. We carried the Caribbean in terms of growth rate throughout the period. So as you grow and you get back to your pre-COVID numbers, the increment of growth will be lower, so that Jamaica's 2.7%, which is for 25, not 24, right, is well ahead, because our 2.7%, for example, is on a volume that is higher than everybody else in the Caribbean except Domrep and Mexico. So all the rest of the Caribbean combined, the English-speaking Caribbean combined, their volume doesn't match Jamaica. So when we make 2.7, we probably have an increase in numerical terms that is higher than probably the total output for one of the islands. And I say that with a lot of humility, and not to in any way, demean what happens elsewhere. So just for the member to appreciate that. And the issue of the creatives, yes, that's at the heart of local first. The issue of storytelling, that's what makes us. We're big on that. And we want to spend more time for that storytelling capability that exists, especially in the deep rural, where the griots of the deep rural, as you know, who themselves are not as literate as some, but they have oral tradition, and they can tell their stories, that we get an opportunity with the Ministry of Culture to have these creatives become part of the product in rural Jamaica.
Minister, there is a question of clarification from the member from St. Mary Central.
Point out that the growth I spoke to was 6.1%, 23 to 24, but 6.9% from the 2019 base numbers. So it wasn't a matter of a jump due to COVID. Yes.
I think it's important, member, because what you're talking about here is the aggregate of the whole region, which includes Jamaica's growth. So that growth number I did not indicate to you. We only spoke, no, just to get it right, the aggregate from CTO is the combination of all the 28 of us together, and then an average is taken. So within that space, Jamaica very well would have led the whole area, but there are other areas that had minus, and others that have, and you know, averages are affected by extremes, yes? So we may be this high, but we had others that are that low. So when you put them all together, the average was 6.1. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Members, the mic system actually does not facilitate what you're attempting to do, which is why I'd ask all the members to leave their mics off. But somehow members aren't following the instructions, and therefore I will work with the mic system because it doesn't make sense to spend the day speaking about the mic. So I ask members to turn their mics off to allow for us to move from person to person without having to go through this process again. And it also allows for clarification or follow-up in terms of supplementary of a member who asks a question and is not satisfied and need further clarification of their original question asked. So we go again. No, the member wanted to. So member, for further clarification.
Sorry, Madam Speaker, just in terms of the maths of it, if we make up the majority of the region, then our average should and would be higher than the region if the negatives would have been what would have. So the region's average is 6.1%. It means we are pulling down the average if ours is so much lower than the averages in terms of the maths of it. I'm not clear.
Madam Speaker, the member is not taking into account what I said, that our growth, as I indicated to you, for 2025 is not in that 6.1 you talk about. We have not indicated to you here what the growth was in 24 or 23. But just to let you know for the records, Jamaica's growth since COVID has been phenomenal. And so, you know, we have helped the region to grow and to become fastest growing region on earth, the Caribbean. So just to let you know. So that finally, just to make the point to you, that the rate of growth for Jamaica at this point in time is not as material as to the volume of growth, because the number of more people who come to Jamaica in any given year is higher than the total of what goes to some countries in the region. I just want that point to be made clear.
First person up would be the member from Westmoreland Eastern.
General. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Minister, in your statement, you made mention of $1 billion being of agricultural produce being supplied. But if we look at it in context, the food import bill for the country moved from $800 million US in 2016 to $1.6 billion US. And Statin says that about 60% of that import bill goes to the tourism industry. So the $1 billion really represents 0.65% of what we are spending through the tourism industry. So the question is really about what additional linkages are being formed between tourism and agriculture to ensure that a larger share of the needs of the hotel can be supplied by the local farmers.
Southeast. A member from Southeast St. Anne.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Minister. I have two very specific questions, one more global and the other more local. The new markets that you spoke about, and you made specific reference of Latin America and also Asia, but not mention of Africa. Can the Minister tell the House what steps are being taken to improve airlift from Africa, given the growing population as well as increased disposable income that we know is the case in African societies? The second question, Madam Speaker, relates to the local first model, which we welcome, as you've heard. However, it seems to be premised on the same model of resort-based inclusive approach. And so, would you please tell the House how this model will engage local communities more to ensure that we have an approach to tourism that is community-oriented, community-based, consistent with the point you made about the storytelling and reflecting our culture and so on, but also sustainable, given that we know the resort-based approach does take a toll, a heavy toll on the environment. Thank you.
Next, the member from Hanover Western.
If it so pleases you, Madam Speaker. Minister, I must commend you on a really good presentation. I quite like the idea of local first. And I quote from you, transport operators must have the first opportunity to provide transport to hotels. My question to you, independent transport operators such as JUTA, JU, JCAL, and others, they have been complaining about the high fees that are being charged by the large players in the industry. What is being done to address such those issues? Also, as it relates, my next question relates to the entertainment packages that are being offered by some of these large players, again, local first. I welcome the idea of an entertainment academy, but what measures will be in place to ensure that some of the hotels utilize the services of persons coming from the entertainment academy, as well as even currently some of the employees as it relates to providing entertainment in the hotels? And also, what marketing support is being offered to smaller hotels within the space, especially Negril? I must also say that I'm happy to hear that there are plans as it relates to the Lucy, the bypass in Lucy. I'm sure that will add to the tourism product. I'm, however, hopeful that that will be done if there's a timeline with respect to that bypass.
Last question comes from the member from Westmoreland Central. Would you be so kind?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Two quick questions for the Minister. Just to expound a bit from what the member from Eastern Westmoreland said. The ALEX program that you mentioned, the linkages program, you mentioned that 2 billion has been circulated. The real question is how many farmers have actually benefited from this program so far. I haven't really, I know it's a linkages program, so farmers would be creating the produce to be used within this program. So I'm asking if we have that information to see specifically how it has benefited the farmers of this country. And secondly, I haven't heard anything mentioned in the local first about sports tourism. And in the context of the Jamaica match later, sports brings a lot of people to Jamaica. And what I'm asking if we have incorporated this in the local first, because we have a lot of facilities across Jamaica that we would need to invest in order to really improve the level of tourism that comes from sports. I'm asking if that has been included in the program.
No, I have a question I wanted to ask.
Your mic is on. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Minister, I want to join those on this side who have indicated the importance of the local first, which is very important to many of us and our local communities. And the question I want to ask you really is around when you say that you're expecting this to spur development and to bring different sectors in. The sector that comes to mind that I want to ask you about is the fishers and how, and I say that not just because I have a constituency where we do have fishers, but today I was listening to some fishers from St. Anne speaking about the problem that they have. And the question to you, Minister, is how will the government of Jamaica protect our fishers out at sea as they go to earn a livelihood with the questions that now abound, where some of them are taken off their vessels are destroyed, and where there is no discussion about compensation and about securing their livelihood?
Thank you very much, members, for this very wide field of questions. And it is good because it does make the point that tourism is of some real importance to all of you in the same way that we feel the passion and the urge to ensure that the industry benefits everybody. And I'm very heartened by the response in relation to the strategy of Jamaica, of local first, and I'm driven by all the questions that have been put. And I want to just, Mr. Speaker, lump my answers within that frame for all the questions local first, because local first is intended to speak to all those factors that you have raised. And that is what it is about. And this is why the consultation is going to be so wide. Minister Hamilton has been charged to get that team going starting next week, and we'll be on the road consulting. So the JISTV Juta, Maxi, local transportation. In fact, if Mr. Speaker, I am to take a little tail out of school, they played a big role in driving this strategy that we're talking about, the local transportation and our local tour operators. So I just wanted that point to sink in, that yes, we are very concerned about that and the inequities within that system, and we are going to deal with it. I said so at Sam Sharp Square, if you remember, that yes, we are going to do. No, you see how quickly he protests? Thou dost protest too much. Mr. Speaker, the question from the member from Westmoreland Eastern concerning the Alex platform. That's a very important question, and I'm happy to respond to it because it changes the game in terms of how small players, I'm talking about 2-acre, 2.5-acre member from Southeast St. Elizabeth, and 3-acre little farmers now have access using technology that they can go on their phone and speak to the purveyors in the hotel and make the deal sell right there at the farm and collect their money. So this is very important, and no foreign entity is in that stream. It's all local small farmers. We're not talking about, so when you talk about the 60% of the import, yes, that is true because 60% of the consumption of food are for local as well is imported because we don't produce rice here in that quantity. We don't produce flour here, and a lot of the meats and the wines and all of those things that they do. So yes, but if we keep 40% at the level that I am moving, and you get to 8 million visitors, and 40% of the consumption is local, we're good. Do the math. So now, getting there is what we are about. And that's about building capacity of our local producers to scale up. And a lot of the discussion that is going to happen will be with the bankers and the financiers. A lot of that discussion that is going to take place is with the bigger farmers who can scale up and who will use technology to have greater levels of production with manufacturers and so on. So this is a whole new ball game that we are introducing. You heard me talk about it. The member from Western St. Andrew is aware of how long and hard we talk about the supply logistics center that we want to develop for tourism. That's all part of it, to make sure that more and more of our local people have the capacity to supply against the industry. The last response, of course, the member from Southwest St. Andrew, a little bit outside of my remit, Madam Member, but I understand the concern, and it will be taken up at the right level. May it please you, Mr. Speaker. Sports, no, but sports is part of the game. No, hold on. Minister of Sports and I have been working on this, and we have an announcement shortly to make in relation to sports tourism. So we'll see, yes, member from... You will hear a little more later on about that particular announcement that we have to make about sports tourism. Absolutely correct. Sports tourism is not necessarily enshrined in the strategies of local first, because that's huge, big, mega, but it will involve locals for sure. May it please you, Mr. Speaker.
We will now have the member from St. Catherine West Central, Minister of Health and Wellness.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, colleagues. Mr. Speaker, I take this opportunity to update this Honorable House on the current status of dengue in Jamaica, and of course, leading up to that point, the mosquitoes that many have called about, and some are expressing rightfully so, concerns about. We note, Mr. Speaker, that in recent times, complaints from the population about the prevalence of mosquitoes across their communities and the wish to allay some fears, we are reassuring the public of our commitment to keeping them informed, helping them to appreciate the challenges that we face, and defining again and reminding our role in that process as well as their own role in terms of personal responsibility. Mr. Speaker, the yearly pattern of dengue in Jamaica shows a distinct seasonality, with the highest incidence of cases being seen in the latter part of the year, peaking around October. As of the 13th of October 2025, the number of dengue cases has been below the normal epidemic threshold since September 2024. To date, there have been 23 dengue cases recorded for the month of September, suspected and confirmed that is, and this is well below the epidemic threshold of a similar period where we had some with 257. So you would have to get to 257 or more to get to that epidemic threshold. So we're well within that. At the same time, Jamaica is currently experiencing a notable increase in mosquito population across multiple species, particularly nuisance mosquitoes. And we refer to nuisance mosquitoes as domestic species that are here with us, have always been here with us, but they do not carry the virus itself. The recent shift from drought to intense rainfall has created ideal conditions for mosquito breeding. When in drought, we often turn to water storage practices that unintentionally create breeding sites, so the use of drums, tanks, buckets. When rains return, these containers, along with clogged drains, discarded items, and natural depressions, become filled with water, triggering explosive mosquito breeding sites. Of note, too, Mr. Speaker, is a sudden rise in soil-breeding mosquito species, which lay their eggs on damp or semi-dry soil in flood-prone areas, and these species have adapted to depositing eggs in areas that may remain dry for extended periods, but are likely to flood following rainfall. And this is a little public education, but we think it's necessary. During drought conditions, these eggs remain dormant in the soil, often for weeks or even up to a year. So those eggs can last up to a year, depending on the species of mosquitoes. Once heavy rains arrive, which they have over recent weeks, the soil becomes saturated and flooded and triggers mass hatching. The result is a sudden and dramatic increase in adult mosquito populations, especially among several aggressive and nuisance-biting mosquito species. The surge follows a period of drought succeeded by heavy rainfall and is a climatic pattern that significantly influences mosquito breeding dynamics. The rise in mosquito population, Mr. Speaker, poses several challenges. Greater nuisance biting affecting daily activities and sleep, and that's where we have gotten a number of calls, expressions of concern, and rightfully so, the fear of the risk of dengue or other mosquito-borne diseases. Increased demand for vector control interventions, including fogging, larviciding, and source reductions, as well as elevated risk of disease outbreaks, especially in vulnerable communities. The point, Mr. Speaker, is that these nuisance mosquitoes are those especially affecting the population at this time and causing the levels of discomfort that many are experiencing. In other words, the population of mosquitoes are primarily nuisance related. Still a problem, because nobody wants to be bitten by a mosquito, but it's not the Aedes aegypti virus-carrying mosquito. The Aedes aegypti species, the vector that carries the dengue virus, when there is currently no significant rise in this population, and there is no significant rise based on the surveillance, and we do expect an increase, however, in this disease-carrying type by the end of October into November. So what the experts are saying is that while currently this is not the case, it is likely to become the case later on this month into next month. I suspect it has something to do with the science of how the breeding takes place, which I won't try to explain. Dengue is endemic to Jamaica, and all 4 serotypes have been identified and have caused outbreaks. The recent dengue outbreaks occurred in 2007, 2010, 12, 13, 16, 18 to 20, meaning 2018 to 2020, and 23 to 24, with increasing frequencies noted over the period. And this is not unique to Jamaica. Dengue, because of climate change, has become a more frequent occurrence globally, certainly in tropical climates. The data from the National Surveillance Unit indicates that dengue fever activity is low as of the week October 11, 2025. Year to date, there have been some 379 dengue cases for 2025, much fewer than when compared to the similar period last year, where we had 1,819 for the same period in 2024. And there was also 2 dengue deaths last year, and so far for 2025, 2 this year. While the historical dengue season is between September to January of the following year, peaking in October around epidemiology week 41 to 43 for 2025, the seasonal line has not been exceeded as of October 11, 2025. Based on the epidemiological surveillance data for 25-26, dengue season is either delayed in its onset or the dengue season is a low activity season. There's a chart on the screen which shows different color coding. And if you follow the white line and the extreme, my right, perhaps your left, where the line ends, you'll see that it's below the green line, which means that we are actually below the normal threshold as it relates to dengue reporting. So we are actually doing better in a sense than what we would normally, how we would normally fare this time of year. And I just want to reassure the public of that. So it helps to appreciate the understanding of what is happening. Notwithstanding, Madam Speaker, our vector workers have been actively engaged in the field with the intensification of adult siding and larva siding activities in response to increased mosquito populations, heightened risk of vector-borne diseases. Currently, we have approximately, Mr. Speaker, 492 permanent vector control workers. And this could in part explain why we are where we are, because in 2022, we had 213 vector workers. This government has put the budget in place, created the posts where we have up to date doubled the amount of workers in the field. And they are working, so they are out every day. And I'm sure that they are making an impact, certainly based on what we see here. This represents a 131% increase in our complement of vector workers. We have other posts to fill, over 300, as part of the full complement. So what we used to do, just to explain, Madam Speaker, I hope I wasn't calling you Mr. Speaker earlier. You just came up, okay? My apologies if I were. We have in the past been hiring temporary workers when we have an uptick in the vector and in the risk, with the risk of dengue. What the government has decided to do is to convert those temporary workers into permanent workers, which is in keeping with our commitment to worker well-being, greater predictability, better planning, training, and so on. And this is the result of that, where you're seeing more workers. I've given instructions in terms of the increased population for the regional technical directors to meet with the parish managers and vector teams to allow for additional overtime hours where necessary to engage, and that's important because we now have to do later in the night, sometimes early in the mornings, to also engage additional temporary workers where parishes require additional temporary workers, to the end of the season, in anticipation of a later expected rise in the mosquito population. I must make mention, Madam Speaker, that fogging will be conducted at schools also on the weekends, and we'll be working through the Ministry of Education on doing so, because the schools are a breeding site and can pose a risk, certainly, to our students and the staff, and those arrangements are in place. Additionally, we're looking at bringing on stream a cleanup program towards the end of October into November, and we will provide greater details on that cleanup program, the bulky waste and other such things that contribute to the breeding sites. On October 2025, Madam Speaker, in terms of vehicles, 81% of our fleet were operational. That's about 52 vehicles in service. This level of functionality supports ongoing work in the field. The swing fog is currently 84% operational. That's 139 handheld foggers in service, and these are critical to the fogging efforts in the field. And I would just like to use the opportunity to update the House on the International Center for Environmental and Nuclear Sciences and the sterilization program that I had spoken about a few years ago. The breeding of mosquitoes, sterilizing them, releasing them in the population. They will then mate with their opposite and by extension not produce the eggs that can then breed into a mosquito, simply put. The team at the university, Professor Grant, that we're working with, they have now acquired the machine.
Minister's time for speaking has expired. House Leader.
Madam Speaker.
5 minutes.
Requesting an additional 5 minutes for the Minister to complete his statement.
Question is that the Minister be allowed 5 minutes to complete his statement by Minister. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister, 5 minutes exactly.
Exactly, Madam Speaker, or less. So I just wanted to update the Honourable House that the piece of equipment has been acquired. It's now being tested, and in short order, we will have the implementation, at least on a pilot basis, of the sterile mosquito program to deal with the challenges that we have. So it is still in effect. Madam Speaker, I reiterate that while our dengue numbers are low at this time, persons must continue to take precautions to prevent illness. Personal responsibility, despite the efforts of the government, must become a priority now in the season. And we continue to reinforce the message that Jamaicans must search and destroy mosquito breeding sites, even as we lead the vector control measures. We must move with alacrity to search, destroy these breeding sites. Most of the times, 90% of the times, they are in and around the home, the backyard, the used tire, the tins, the vase and the whatnot are in the kitchen. If you do a quick search, that's where you find the breeding sites, and those are the mosquitoes that become your threat. The use of DEET or repellent controlling DEET, a standard response, and the regional authorities have been asked to intensify the public education program. So, Madam Speaker, this is an update. It's a preemptive strike. It's not an announcement of any great risk, but it is anticipation of the population expanding in the weeks to come. And it's important that we all take the necessary precaution. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Is your mic on? Is your mic on?
I believe so, yes.
Member from St. Catherine Southeast.
Madam Speaker, let me first thank the residents of Southeast St. Catherine who have, in spite of an onslaught of a campaign against me, chosen me as their elected member to this honorable house. I must say, though, Madam Speaker, that with all due respect to the member from West Central, this is really the minister, honorable minister, this is really not what Jamaica wanted to hear from him today. With a spate, well, if we are in tune to social media, member, we would know that there are questions hovering around about an Integrity Commission report. There are questions as to how we are really dealing with mental health in Jamaica and the renaming and rebranding of a hospital that has leaking wards, overcrowded patients, and no capital budget for about 5 years coming from the Ministry of Health, with previous announcements about destigmatization going back as far as from 2019 by the Honorable Minister, where residents are not growing their food at the Bellevue Hospital because of therapy, but because of sustenance, because the food budget has been cut. My response is governed by Standing Order 11A, Section 2. I can't speak, not just about the speech. No, you are speaking about the response. Subsection 917. Okay. What has happened over the last week is that the Honorable Minister has been on a media tour deflecting from what is pertinent, his management of the Ministry of Health and Wellness. And we are seeing where announcements are made that the delay at the Cornwall Regional Hospital will not be as great as it was predicted to be. We are seeing about where the Children's Hospital is going to be delayed. We are seeing discussions finally about forensic psychiatry being addressed. And we are hearing about the mental health challenges that ought to be seriously dealt with by the Ministry of Health, but responsibility is being pushed back on the public. This is a pattern of no accountability and deflection, denying involvement, and then defamation of anyone who dares to criticize the Honorable Minister. So I will say, because it is not now to elaborate on every single scandal that has been met with this response. The archives are there, the Hansard records is there. But I will ask the Honorable Minister if, when the Auditor General's report on the state of affairs at the University Hospital is made public and brought to this House, if he will remember that he had direct ministerial interference in the composition of the board when they wanted to have a reformation of the leadership of that hospital. Because if what is out there is true, then whatever we have been asking about in terms of clarity, in terms of breaches of procurement guidelines, in terms of outright fraud and misrepresentation, overpaying for equipment, then we will see whether or not this situation at the University Hospital will need further drilling down. As we are talking about dengue, I will use my last 10 seconds to say that in Portmore, it is not just a fogging problem. The drains have collapsed. They're blocked. We need help over there. And it's not just about fogging.
I have more to say. Thank you very much, member. Thank you very much, member. Thank you. Thank you very much, member. Will the member from Portland Eastern ask his question?
Minister, my simple question to you is in relation to dengue. Is there any communication with local government in light of the fact that garbage collection has been next to none? Certainly is there any communication with local government, the local government minister and the ministry in relation to garbage collection in light of the fact that you're highlighting dengue as a problem now and the prevention aspect of it being garbage is a breeding ground for the mosquito. So is there communication, and will you use your power in the ministry to ensure that garbage collection takes place, especially in Portland Eastern? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll take the second question first. The Minister of Local Government and myself sit in a particular place every Monday, and there is no decision or announcement coming from me that doesn't involve his participation. So the answer to your question is, he and I communicate and we work together as we do as a government. And I know he's very approachable. So if you want to approach him, I'm sure he won't rebuff you if you have a concern as a representative of the people of East Portland. To the member who raised the other issues, I'm not sure if it was a question or a statement.
Statement by ministers. Minister, I hope you stick to the statement.
It is a statement.
Because as much as I allow the opposition member to go on and speak about other things other than the statement, in the strictest appreciation of the standing orders, it should not be so. And I hope we do not descend into that type of an arrangement. Member, if Minister, if you're finished answering the questions from a member, then I would like to know.
But, Madam, if you will indulge me just for one line to say that, the members seem to be practicing for the next general election. This election is done, the people have spoken, and we're on this side.
One question.
There were no other mics on, so these are the last two questions. I'm going back to questions. First, it would be the member from St. Mary Central. His mic came on first. And after that, it would be the member from Clarendon Southwest. Minister, your mic can go on third, and that's it. After that, we move on the agenda.
Madam Speaker, the minister's statement says the yearly pattern for dengue in Jamaica shows a distinct seasonality with the highest incidence of cases being seen in the latter part of the year, peaking around October. What I would like to find out from the minister is why are we now rolling out a public education campaign as opposed to earlier, and why a cleanup program for October and November as opposed to being a little bit more proactive, seeing that that is when the pattern says we have the peak.
Good question. Good question.
Member from Clarendon.
Yeah.
Southwest.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Minister, I noticed that you did not make any mention earlier of the likelihood of not just dengue but malaria being a concern based on recent releases coming out of the Ministry of Health. Could you say what accounted for your omission of this grave concern as it relates to those from next door who are coming into the country illegally, where you have detected that there's a likelihood, your ministry, what would have accounted for you omitting to address that issue, which is a very important issue, I believe, that needs to be addressed? Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the member asking about public education. The public education program is actually ongoing. This is the time that I'm speaking to it, and we are going to intensify it. And it's an annual event, so we do it every year. The cleanup exercise is ongoing too. I mean, when we need to do special interventions, we speak to those interventions, but we have had several special interventions during the course of the year for one reason or the other. Of course, we coordinate and collaborate with the Minister of Local Government on that score. So it's not too late. As I outlined, the greater threat comes later this month into next month, and it goes on until January. As it relates to malaria, member, we have a special protocol where that risk is detected. We have no record at this point that we have malaria here. We don't, or where there may be a risk, for example, persons turning up on our shores from wherever. The health authorities are normally very involved in that process, and they do their necessary inspections. And if there is a view either that is a possibility, then the appropriate protocols are in place. But as of now, we do not have that risk, and thank God we will hopefully try to keep it that way. So the public doesn't need to be fearful.
Thank you very much, Minister. Announcements, Clerk.
Laid on the table of the House is the annual report and financial statements of the Housing Agency of Jamaica Limited for the year ended March 31, 2022. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Bills brought from the Senate. Petitions, papers, reports from committees. Notices of motions given orally.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next sitting of the House, I intend to move the following motions. Whereas the road infrastructure in most of the housing schemes in Jamaica are in deplorable conditions, and while these roads continue to deteriorate without any maintenance by government, and where some of these housing developments are in existence in excess of 50 years, 40 to 50 years, and where successive governments at the central and the local government level have refused to assume full responsibility for these infrastructures, and where such actions by government result in severe difficulties and suffering for Jamaicans living in these housing schemes, and whereas these residents are taxpayers, most of whom are poor, less fortunate Jamaicans, be it resolved that Parliament calls on the government to immediately assume full responsibility for all road infrastructure in housing schemes throughout Jamaica and commence with the repairs and rehabilitation needed to bring all these roads to proper and usable conditions. And be it further resolved that in all future developments, a condition of the development approval is that at the time of the issuance of the first title to a homeowner, the title to all road infrastructure and common areas be transferred to the local government, Kingston St. Andrew Corporation, or any other local authority, including but not limited to the National Work Agency, in order that such entity can exercise the right of ownership, inclusive of maintenance. Whereas Section 35, subsection 3 of the Representation of People Act states that the elector shall forthwith enter the enclosed area of the polling center, so provided, and there make a mark with a black lead pencil within the space containing the name of the candidate of his choice. And whereas there are other implements other than a black lead pencil that can also affect such mark for the candidate of one's choice, and whereas there are other marks other than a cross that an elector may make in a space containing the name of the candidate of one's choice, be it resolved that this Honourable House takes the necessary action to have the appropriate amendments done to Section 35, subsection 3 of the Representation of People Act to provide that any implement that an elector finds appropriate or convenient to use to make the required mark shall be lawful. And be it further resolved that further amendments be made to the said Section 35, subsection 3 of the Representation of People Act to make any mark on a ballot by an elector in the space containing name of the candidate of his choice or the intent of the elector can be discerned shall be valid and not limited to a cross. Be it whereas Section 41A, subsection 1 of the Representation of People Act specifies that every candidate in an election may appoint such person as he thinks fit to be outdoor agent and shall issue to any such outdoor agent appointed by him a certificate of appointment in the prescribed form, specifying the polling station in respect of which the agent is appointed. And whereas in many cases, returning officers, election day workers, and auxiliary or one-day police and members of security forces have prevented these said agents from effectively carrying out the functions for which they were appointed. And whereas the reason given is that these agents cannot be on the compound where the polling is being conducted, and in other cases that agents must be hundreds of meters away from the polling station. And where subsection 77(1), subsection 1 of the Representative of People Act does not apply to outdoor agents, and where section 41A, subsection 3 of the Representation of People Act specifies the distance of the outdoor agent to be not less than 20 yards from polling station, and whereas no agent can carry out the function for which he or she is appointed, being such distant from where the poll is being conducted, be it resolved that Section 41A, subsection 1 of Representative of People Act be amended to allow the person appointed by a candidate as his agent to be within the precincts of and closer than 20 yards to the polling station, as now specified, so that agent will be able to carry out the duties for which that agent was appointed. Whereas subsection 33 of the Representation of People Act specify that the poll shall be taken in each polling station between the hours of 7 o'clock in the forenoon and 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And whereas there are changes to circumstances which have influenced the setting of the time for polling, and whereas we are now in an electronic age, be it resolved that Section 33 of the Representation of People Act be amended, allowing the time for polling on election day to be between the hours of 7 in the forenoon and 6 in the afternoon. Where Section 44(3) of the Representation of People Act states, if in the course of counting the votes, any ballot paper is found with the counterfoil still attached thereto, the presiding officer shall carefully conceal the number thereon from all persons present, and without examining them himself, remove and destroy such counterfoil. He shall not reject the ballot merely by reason of his former failure to remove the counterfoil. Be it resolved that this section be amended to add, or the counterfoil having been removed above or below the perforated line. Whereby a partial verification of voters list was done more than 15 years ago, and whereas the current voters list reflects a distorted number of actual electors in Jamaica, but instead an inflated number, and whereas the number given after an election as a voter turnout do not reflect the true percentage, be it resolved that the government immediately provide the funds necessary for Electoral Office of Jamaica to embark on a total re-verification of the voters in Jamaica.
Questions and answers to questions. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to the sitting of the House. Motions for leave to introduce bills. Members, presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained. Minister.
Madam Speaker, I now move to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the Criminal Records Rehabilitation of Offenders Amendment Act 2025.
A bill shortly entitled the Criminal Records Rehabilitation of Offenders Amendment Act 2025, read a first time.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice of second reading of the bill. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take second reading of the bill and take it through all its concluding stages.
Public business. House Leader.
Go. Madam Speaker, thank you very much. I am pleased to announce the opening of the debate of the Criminal Records Rehabilitation of Offenders Amendment Act 2025, and we'll have the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, Mr. Delroy Chuck. I don't suspect you'll be closing today. So you will not be closing today. So other members who may not be prepared to contribute today will have the opportunity to engage. So there is a little correction that we need to make. Thank you.
Thank you, House Leader.
No. The old truck.
Just for good order, the member did say you'll be going through all stages. Sorry? Yes, he did. Yes, he did. So I'm asking that it be corrected.
Yes. Yes. No, Sorry? The what? Right. It's a normal part of... Yes, I'm going to. Relax. Time come.
Minister?
Yes, Madam Speaker.
We're just going to send you a short note as an amendment at public business, if you don't mind.
Right. I should have indicated, Madam Speaker, to the clerk who gave me the script that we are not taking it through all its concluding stages. So just for...
So at public business,
correction.
as public business Minister, you may correct at public business in reference
That is correct,
to
Madam
the
Speaker.
Speaker in respect of taking it through
That is correct,
its
Madam
concluding
Speaker.
stages.
I intended to do that, Madam.
All right, so go ahead, Minister.
So, colleagues in the House, I rise for the consideration of the Criminal Records Rehabilitation of Offenders Amendment Bill, and to indicate...
Minister, a moment, please. Please first move for the suspension of the standing orders, and at that stage, make the amendment in respect of taking it through all its concluding stages at the start of public business. Thanks.
I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take second reading of the bill and to correct at the presentation of bills earlier that I'm not taking it through all its stages today. Okay? So, Madam Speaker, I will now indicate to my colleagues in the House that I will be opening those members who would like to speak today can speak. But I will not close until next week either. I will give 2 weeks. But I'm hoping that members will take the opportunity to participate not only on the 21st, but also on the 28th, when I hope to close the bill. So
Thanks.
you have 2 additional sit-ins to be able to participate. And I strongly
Thanks,
urge...
Minister. Just a statement before you continue. Members, the question is that the standing orders be suspended to enable the Minister to commence the debate with the understanding that allowance will be given for further comments and contribution. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister,
Thank you, Madam
may
Speaker.
start.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Now, I make the point to members that I am absolutely sure that all of you will have been approached or will be approached, especially the new members, about expungement. In other words, there are over 400,000 criminal records of persons who are at the Criminal Records Office, and many of them do seek expungement. So it is important, colleagues, that you get some understanding of the limitation or the jurisdiction of expungement in Jamaica. This has started some time ago. It was revised in 2014 when the leader of the opposition, when he was Minister of Justice, introduced the 3rd schedule into the Act. Now that 3rd schedule has restricted the number of offenses that are expungible. You will see today we are trying to relax that a bit, and hopefully in future there could be further relaxation. But at this time, we have the present regime, and this present regime has caused a great deal of disappointment, frustration, and really heartaches for a number of persons who have been convicted of crime. Many of them for the first time and only time. And they appeal, but because there's a restriction, the expungement cannot be made. So it's very important, colleagues, that you know what these restrictions are. Firstly, in the 3rd schedule, it lists those offenses that cannot be expunged. Secondly, if the sentence, even of expungible offenses, is over 5 years, it still cannot be expunged. In other words, even if the offense is expungible, once the sentence is over 5 years, then it still cannot be expunged. Well, we are coming to that. It was, yes. So you will see today that what we're trying to do is to relax it somewhat. So for example, we are going to lift the sentence so that expungible offenses will now be eligible, notice not entitled, eligible for expungement if the sentence was less than 10 years. In other words, moving from 5, we're moving to 10. Also, we will be removing a number of offenses from the 3rd schedule. But the most important one is that we are going to remove Section 7 of the 3rd schedule, which deals with drug offenses. Now, this is of some importance. And the reason why it is, many, I would say tens of thousands of offenders in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and maybe even over the last 10, 20 years, were caught dealing and exporting marijuana, cocaine, and other drugs. These offenders have not caused any victims. They were caught with drugs. And many of them have had their conviction served, paid their fines,
serve their sentence 20, 30, 40 years after their life has been held up. They can't move on. And those offenses are just not expungible at this time. There are many cases that come to the expungement committee appealing to the minister for these offenses to be expunged. The truth of the matter is we have refused virtually all because the third schedule restricts it. So over the last 2 years, for example, we have had over 7,000 applications for expungement, and over 1,000 have actually been refused, and most of them are for drug offenses. So you can see that people have said, well, yes, I paid my fine, I served my time, I've paid my debt to society, I am straight, I have not committed any further crime. You have teachers, you have pastors, you have business people. Why can't you get an expungement? And so the opportunity has now arisen for us to change that. And in this legislation, we have removed, so persons who have been convicted for drug offenses, have served their time, and have had a period of rehabilitation, usually not less than 10 years, but if the sentence was 10 years, the rehabilitation will be 15 years. Up to 10 years, it will be 10 years rehabilitation. If it is 10 years, 15 years rehabilitation. This is an opportunity to give such persons a second chance. Now, you may ask, but what about other offenses? The truth of the matter, over the past many years, at various levels within the government, we have been looking at how we can adjust this, or make amendments to this Criminal Records Rehabilitation of Offenders Act. We have had many discussions at various levels, including at the cabinet level, as to what can we do. When you take, for instance, serious offenses, the answer is no. Murder, rape, robbery with aggravation, all these serious offenses, the answer is no, they're not expungible, and we don't want to move them at this time. But when you take, say, possession of ammunition and gun, these, you may say, should be considered. The truth of the matter is that in the present environment, we might be sending the wrong signal. Not that eventually it might not be done. But in the present environment, we have to be careful how we send a signal which could be the wrong signal. It is the same with scamming. It's in the third schedule. If we try to remove scamming from the third schedule, you can see that we would be sending the wrong signal. So, although those were considered, it is clear we cannot, at this time, take them from the third schedule, because it may well send the wrong signal. What would the good if all these persons who now suffer, those persons who have had their records expunged, and even those who are awaiting, let potential criminals know how frustrating and disappointed it is that even when you commit one offense, that record will be with you for a long time. It's important that they help the society to assist us in reducing crime. So, Madam Speaker, we took the opportunity to look at other jurisdictions. So when you take, for instance, there are many jurisdictions where all the offenses are expungible after a period of rehabilitation. But we are not going that route. When we look at the Caribbean, we see, for example, in Barbados, all the offenses are expungible, but if the sentence is greater than 7 years, no. So in other words, even though the offenses are expungible, once you get a sentence greater than 7 years, then it's not expungible, which indicates that serious offenses that would have attracted the higher sentences would still not be expungible because of the sentence. So Barbados' limit was 7-year sentence. In the Bahamas,
And by the way, Barbados has various rehabilitation periods from 3 years to 10 years. When you look at the Bahamas has a number of offenses in the 3rd schedule. But all the other offenses, expungible offenses, there's a rehabilitation period for indictable offenses of 16 years, and for summary offenses, 8 years. So that in the Bahamas, you can see for expungible offenses, regardless of the sentence. Remember now, Barbados is 7, Bahamas, no limit on the sentence for expungible offenses. The rehabilitation period is 16 years for indictable offenses and 8 years for summary offenses. So you see, colleagues, that we have taken a middle ground. So we are saying we go up to 10 years. And we also remove the drug offenses, as Bahamas has done, and in Barbados, and virtually no other Caribbean countries except St. Kitts, and it has put a limit on the drug offenses. No other Caribbean countries has any restriction on drug offenses being expungible. So we are not out of the loop in terms of what other countries in the Caribbean and across the world is doing. So bear that in mind, colleagues, and those persons who want to make a contribution. If you need further assistance in terms of material, please, I'm open to assist you in any way so that you can make a contribution to this debate in terms of how we move forward. Not only, I hope that you will support the bill in its present form, which is a midway position. I have no doubt that people will say we should have gone further. Instead of 10 years, make it 12 years or 15 years, or go like other countries and make it whatever the sentence is. But I'm begging my colleagues, let us take it a step at a time. So I'm asking you for the support of this bill, which is a midway position, even though in your contribution, you can speculate as to where we could go further. I have no problem with that, okay? But let us try and keep it as it is now. Propose later, okay? So, having said all of that, Madam Speaker, I will just take members through the bill. And in Clause 1, provides the formal title of the Act, the Criminal Records Rehabilitation of Offenders Amendment Act 2025, and confirms that it is to be read together with the Principal Act. Clause 2 amends Section 3. This clause increases the sentence threshold for eligibility for expungement from 5 years to 10 years. It allows the Criminal Records Rehabilitation of Offenders Board to consider applications from persons who serve sentences of more than 5 but not more than 10 years, thereby widening access to expungement in potentially deserving cases. Clause 3, amendment to Section 4. This clause clarifies that some foreign convictions, including those offenses found in the 3rd schedule, can be evaluated subject to the board's discretion, even where these offenses may otherwise be barred from expungement in Jamaica. This enables fairer treatment for Jamaicans whose offenses were already expunged in a foreign jurisdiction. Members, we have the most unfortunate situation with the present legislation. A person has committed a drug offense abroad. When they return to Jamaica, they want, because the offense has been listed in the CRO here, it cannot be expunged. You have people who come to the Ministry of Justice and demonstrate to say we never commit this offense in Jamaica. Where I committed it in the UK, they have expunged it. I know you're telling me you have it down here. And this particular section, clause 3, is to make sure that where the person is eligible, because even though he has not committed the offense here, if there's any evidence of misconduct or, say, another offense, it certainly will not be expunged. Clause 4, this clause introduces a new rehabilitation period of 15 years for applicants who serve terms exceeding 5 but not exceeding 10 years. This change ensures that a reasonable period for law-abiding conduct is demonstrated before eligibility arises. Clause 5, it amends Section 5A. In respect of juvenile offenders, this clause mirrors Clause 4 by establishing a rehabilitation period of 8 years where the term of imprisonment exceeded 5 but did not exceed 10 years. This is consistent with the principle of graduated accountability and redemption for our youth. Clause 6, this clause adds a reference to the Constitution of Jamaica, making it clear that constitutional protections must also be considered in the interpretation of the Act. Clause 7 merely simplifies the language of Section 20E. Clause 8 sets out a non-exhaustive list of factors the board may consider when assessing an application. These include the nature and gravity of the offense, social inquiry and psychological reports, demonstrated remorse or restitution, and age at the time of the offense. Members have the bill, you will see a whole list that the expungement committee should consider, a group of them, to determine whether the applicant should have his offense expunged. The framework there ensures that the board's decisions are grounded in transparency, fairness, and evidence of rehabilitation. Clause 9 introduces automatic expungement, and I didn't mention this in my brief earlier remark, for certain old non-custodial convictions, specifically offenses with non-custodial sentences imposed and satisfied before January 1st, 2005, where the individual has not been convicted of another offense. This provision recognizes that persons with minor dated convictions should not have to bear that burden for life, as well as have to undergo the expungement process to clear their name. Colleagues, this is a very important section. It is given persons who had just one conviction, usually a minor conviction, a minor offense, for which they were sentenced to a non-custodial offense. These are for expungible offenses. They got a non-custodial sentence. All of these will be automatically expunged. Just like, the possession of ganja, one spliff, it will happen the same way. So if a person, any Jamaican, who committed an offense before the 1st of January 2005, got a sentence which is a non-custodial sentence for an expungible offense, when they go to the Criminal Records Office, if they do, the record should show no offense. This is important, colleagues, because if you have persons applying, it could be close to 100,000 or more. Once you ask for a certificate, you don't need to ask for expungement, because it should show up that you have that offense which you got a non-custodial sentence should not show up on the certificate. Fine? Now, colleagues, I must say this. Sometimes if it shows up, it may well be that it has another offense, because it's only if it is a single offense. But if any Jamaican should go to the Criminal Records Office after this bill is gazetted, and all they know is that they had one offense for which they got a non-custodial sentence, if they go to the Criminal Records Office and it shows up on the certificate, they should return the certificate back to the CRO and say, no, that offense, Parliament has decided that it is spent and should be removed from the records totally. So this is something which the Ministry of Justice will definitely educate Jamaicans. Because the usual problem, and I must say this, colleagues, apart from this particular section, there are persons who want to go on farm work, want to go migrate, want to get a visa, and they apply for an expungement. And when they apply for the expungement, they think it's like paying a traffic ticket. They pay the amount at the MOJ, and then they ask the following week if the expungement certificate is ready. The truth of the matter is that, colleagues, it takes time, because once the application comes to the Ministry of Justice, we have to get the CRO record, which oftentimes takes at least 6 months. Now, fortunately, over the last 2 or 3 months, we have put in place and pay 2 persons at the CRO to deal only with expungement, so that the time now is weeks rather than months. So we now have, in fact, over 2,000 applications because of what we have put in place over the last few months. The CRO records, the records are now coming back to the ministry, and those applications can be dealt with very soon. But bear in mind, and I want to make it very clear, colleagues, when they come to you, if the offense that attracted a non-custodial sentence was after the 1st of January 2005, it is not automatically expunged. Is that clear? So if the sentence was 2010, and it's a non-custodial sentence, it may well be eligible for expungement, but it is not automatic. So those persons who had a non-custodial sentence for an offense that is expungible after January the 1st, 2005, you still have to apply for your record to be expunged. And as you can see, and the reason for that 20 years, because you want to make sure that persons who have committed an offense, say 2008, that they have not committed another offense when they apply for expungement. But up to 2005, if there's no further offense committed, we automatically expunge it. Okay? Clause 10, this clause updates the naming of the resident magistrate to a judge of the parish court. Clause 11 expands the membership of the board from between 3 and 5 members to between 7 and 9 members, and adjusts quorum requirements accordingly. It also updates the list of prescribed members, including nominees from the Commission of Police and the Commission of Corrections. This will ensure that the board is adequately resourced to meet its growing responsibilities. Clause 12, amendment to the 3rd schedule. Clause 12 amends the list of offences that are excluded from expungement. I urge members to have a look at the list. Among the changes are the removal of certain minor property offences and offences under the Dangerous Drugs Act, that's Section 7 I mentioned. This is in line with the example set in Bahamas and the global softening of the position concerning redeemability of individuals. People must be given a second chance where they have shown that they are reformed, they are rehabilitated, and they want to go straight. Many of these persons, colleagues, have suffered and are suffering because they can't get promotion, they can't get a job, they can't get a farm work ticket, and they can't do many things. So the opportunity is now being opened up a bit for them. In conclusion, colleagues, these amendments are deliberate, proportionate, and reflect a justice system that is both accountable and compassionate. They are rooted in the belief that individuals who have paid their debt to society and demonstrated true rehabilitation deserve an opportunity to fully reintegrate and contribute to national life. This bill represents a balancing act. We are seeking to give effect to the notion of second chances while continuing to hold offenders sufficiently accountable for wrongdoings to the extent appropriate to the specific offences. Madam Speaker, there may be those who feel that the proposed amendments do not go far enough in widening the categories of persons eligible for expungement. Conversely, there are others who may believe that no expansion should have been contemplated at all. we welcome and encourage a robust debate on this matter. As a government, we are guided by the principle that we exist to give meaningful effect to the will of the people and to shape policy in a manner that reflects both justice and the evolving values of our society. Madam Speaker, I look forward to the support, critical or otherwise, of this piece of legislation. Thank you. Madam Speaker, I now ask for the suspension of the debate until next week.
Okay, noted, Minister. Yes, I was just going to issue a reminder to individuals that if you choose to participate today and you're not quite ready, you would not be allowed as a member to participate again. So you only get one shot. And therefore, yes, I would recommend that the person who responds appreciate that that's your only time contributing. The member from St. Elizabeth Northeast would like to also contribute to the debate. Try the mic on the other side.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I wish to begin by commending the Minister for introducing what I consider to be quite well-needed amendments as it relates to this particular issue, which plagues young men and women from northeastern St. Elizabeth to northeastern St. Andrew. People who would have made mistakes many years ago have turned over a new leaf, but unfortunately are plagued by the ghost of past mistakes. And so on this side, I welcome the proposed amendments. I must confess, however, Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the caution from the Minister, that we really ought properly to try and adopt as best as possible a middle ground. It would be remiss of me to not indicate my concern as it relates to the time period that we have actually contemplated as the ceiling, the maximum ceiling, being 15 years. Indeed, I do believe that we really ought properly to consider being a little bit bolder in how we approach that. But I understand the Minister's position. My major contribution today has to do with seeing how best we can actually add value to what is being proposed. And I think the Minister understands, like myself, that one of the major challenges we face as persons on the outside, it has to do with the length of time that it takes to get their records expunged. My contribution today is therefore based on how we can improve that system. I note the Minister's proposal to actually have all sentences which would have been recorded before the 1st of January 2005 being automatically expunged. But I do believe that it is important for us to go further. And I take note of precedents in other Commonwealth jurisdictions, such as Cayman, where after a particular period of rehabilitation, offenses which did not attract a term exceeding 5 years are automatically expunged. It is my considered view, and I do hope that the Minister will actually take it into consideration, that as it relates to non-custodial offenses And if we are bold enough, offenses which do not carry a conviction of greater than 5 years, perhaps it might be wise to consider having those matters automatically expunged, because what that would do is to relieve the system of some of the backlog which currently obtains, that I know the minister knows all too well about, and notwithstanding his great industry and efforts, we continue to have a challenge in that regard. So I wonder if the minister might consider including a clause which would speak to the fact that non-custodial sentences, at a minimum, ought to, once the rehabilitation period is served, ought to automatically be treated as being expunged. That's my first recommendation. My second recommendation to the minister has to do, again, with seeing how best we can actually cure the backlog and ensure that persons are no longer waiting 2, 3, 4 years, and in some cases even 5 years to get their records expunged. And we do understand that one of the challenges comes from how often, or perhaps the lack of frequency with which the board actually meets. And I do commend the minister for understanding this challenge. I do note that we will be increasing the membership, but I wonder if perhaps we could go further, minister, to actually allow, as in the case of other jurisdictions, for meetings of the boards to take place not just in person, but perhaps we could include a clause which specifically states that the board may have meetings via remote hearing, for example, via teleconference or Zoom or other such manner, and that certainly would allow the board to meet perhaps on a more frequent basis. And not only that, but I note, considering my other life, that even in terms of the court, there are meetings, virtual meetings and virtual court hearings. And so I wonder if perhaps the minister might consider including a clause in this particular bill that would provide for the board to hear matters in that manner. I am hesitant, I must confess, but it would be remiss of me, Minister, even though I understand, quite frankly, the mischief that is intended to be cured. But I must confess there is a sense of discomfort on my end as it relates to the proposed amendment that is contained in Clause 3, which would essentially allow persons who are convicted of offenses in other jurisdictions to have their records expunged, but individuals who are convicted here of the very same offenses cannot have their records expunged. I must confess that it does not sit very well with me, even though I understand, Minister, the mischief that you do hope to cure. But perhaps we could revisit this provision just to ensure equity and to ensure balance, as I'm sure you strive for that. So might I close by simply stating, Minister, that I am indeed pleased with the raft of measures and the raft of proposals that are being contemplated today, and I trust that the Minister will give due consideration to the proposals and the recommendations articulated and advanced. Thank you. Might it so please.
Thank you. Minister, you may move. Minister, you may move to close. Minister, unless to suspend the debate, please.
I now ask for the suspension until the next sitting.
Until the next sitting?
Next sitting of the House.
Members, the question is that the debate be suspended until the next sitting of the House on this bill. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is not contemplated for us to do any other business today. However, I am asking if the House will allow the Honorable Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sports to respond to what has been a significant recognition on this motion of adjournment as Parliamentarian of the Year. Thank you very much.
On the matter of adjournment? Yes.
Let me try that again. Madam Speaker, it's not contemplated to do any business, further business today, and I therefore ask the House to adjourn at a date to be fixed. However, before we take the vote, we wish to have Minister Grange address the House.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On the motion for adjournment, I would like to use the opportunity to thank the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association for awarding me the 2025 Parliamentary Equality and Diversity Award. Madam Speaker, this means so much to me, and I want to thank you for receiving the award on my behalf. No better person could have received the award on my behalf, because in receiving the award on my behalf, you have received it on behalf of all the women who have sat in this Parliament, and those who sit now and those to come. So I thank you so much, Madam Speaker. I'm humbled by this recognition of my efforts to work for an equitable society. I also take this opportunity to thank you, my colleagues, my new friends, my new colleagues in Parliament, and those who have been here with me over the years. I want to thank you for your support, and most notably in the establishment of the bicameral caucus of women parliamentarians. I want to thank those women who sat in Parliament with me over the years. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank the staff of the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, particularly the team from the Bureau of Gender Affairs for the support they have provided to me as we all strive for an equitable society. And I know that they conspired with the House to nominate me, and I must confess that I'm touched by this. I'm usually the one working behind the scene to get others recognized, not the one to seek recognition. Finally, I would like to thank the constituents of St. Catherine Central, for allowing me to be here over the years as a parliamentarian and to not only represent their interest, but also to work for the good of all Jamaicans. Jamaica has come a far way, Madam Speaker, in the fight for gender equality, but we still have a way to go. So let us continue to strive for a Jamaican society that protects and empowers all its citizens, men, women, or boys, and or girls. I want to end with this quote, which was used in the release that was sent out by Parliament, a quote that I am proud to have made. Says, an equitable society can only exist when its members are afforded the opportunity to maximize their potential without fear or restrictions. That has been my life's purpose, and I'm humbled by this recognition of my efforts in that regard. I thank the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association for this award, and I'm honored, and I'm truly, Madam Speaker, grateful. I thank you all.
No. Members, I'll conclude and move for the adjournment by saying this is the very first time in our history that any member of the Jamaican Parliament have been either nominated or have received an award from the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. And so for us, this is a very big recognition. Let us continue to strive for excellence in our participation in the Commonwealth. Members, the question is that the House do now adjourn for a date to be fixed. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. This Honorable House now stands adjourned.